Sunday.
Now, the banks make billions, but as we've heard of the Royal Commission, some of that has come at the expense of customers, from charging fees to dead people to making money from bad advice. The banks don't have the best reputation at the moment. So from what we've heard so far, which banking traps should we all watch out for? Well, finance journalist Nicole Pedersen-McKinnon has 5 of them, and she joins us now from our Brisbane studio. Hey! Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
First of all, before we get into the banking traps, I mean, have you been really shocked by what's come out so far, or have you always sort of known that this has been happening?
Look, I think everyone in Australia has been shocked by what's come out so far, all the way up to the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull. The banks themselves, I think, are the ones that probably are the most stunned, you know, because don't forget, they ultimately wanted this, remember? They didn't want it, then they did want it, because they wanted to restore the public's faith in them. Well, that's backfired, hasn't it?
Yeah.
This stuff is compulsive viewing, you know? It's better than reality TV, because the gotcha strategy that's being used by the Commissioner, Kenneth Hayne, is just incredible. The banking sectors have no idea what's coming at them. And, of course, it's already claimed one corporate scalp, the CEO of AMP, no less. I'll venture there's going to be more to come.
All right, well, let's get into it. Let's look at your top 5 banking traps we need to look out for and avoid. The first one is when banks reduce your mortgage repayments. Isn't that a good thing?
Well, you would think so, right? But it's not. And let me just say at the outset that these are the traps that I've highlighted that the Commission's not going to fix. So these are the things that people need to be really vigilant about, because, in fact, we could all be victims of the banks if not. So, no, CBA recently wrote to its customers and said, hey, we're so lovely. We're going to reduce your repayments when your interest rate falls, right? Sounds good, but actually it's a self-serving, cynical cash grab to keep you in that loan for the full loan term. What's more, they said they're going to suck up the overpayments that you've already made. So again, maximising that interest. By no means are they the only ones that do it. Westpac does it, lots of other institutions do it, but people just need to be alert for it. Set your direct debit slightly higher and they won't be able to reduce it. That's my top tip.
That is a great tip, because, of course, the longer it takes to pay off, then the more interest you're going to be charged.
That's it.
Now,
Absolutely.
your next point, Nicole, is how banks charge through the nose for cash advances. How do they get away with that?
Yeah, look, I don't know about this one, Joe. I mean, I really hope that viewers understand that using cash from a credit card is the worst way of making a purchase. Just make the purchase on the credit card if you absolutely need to, you know. And we heard from the Commission on day 1, credit cards are the biggest source of financial hardship. Now, cash advance rates are 25% at their largest and 20% on average, and that's from day 1. Just don't do it.
Yes, very wise.
Your next tip is about credit cards. They can turn into a debt prison, you say. Well, what should we watch out for there?
Yeah, well, this is really the long-time kind of structure of credit cards. So this idea that people can get a very large limit. We saw a problem gambler with huge limits that CBA were throwing at him in the beginning, and yet they don't have to pay it off really virtually at all. You know, you've got a 2% minimum repayment or maybe $20, like the higher of. So this person that we saw at the Commission was going to take 138 years to repay his debt. It's a massive structural problem with credit cards, and people really need to be aware, because, again, it seems really generous. Oh, I can spend all this and I only have to repay this, but it's a massive trap, huge amounts of interest that can be attracted.
Now, you're warning also about tricky balance transfers. What's the trap with them?
Yeah, well, we know nothing is for free in this life, right? So if you sign up for a 0% balance transfer, you transfer an existing balance to a new institution. It's how they lure you across. There are going to be some stings in the tail. Look, I don't mind that as a strategy to actually knock off a credit card debt, but you have to be really disciplined. No more new spending, because that's going to have a nosebleed interest rate, and again from day 1. And at the end of the balance transfer period, you want that debt to be gone, because if there's any left, again, it'll be a nosebleed interest rate.
Yeah, and finally, this is something we've spoken about on the show before. The interest rate you pay will be based on your credit risk. Is this coming in soon?
It's coming in pretty much full steam ahead on July 1 now.
Wow.
So it's actually been introduced previously. It's called comprehensive credit reporting. So it's where warts and all the information about us, about our money selves, is going to be on our credit files, and that's going to feed in to a credit score, right? But the banks have been kind of tardy in developing this and adopting it. So from July 1, they're going to have to, which means that everyone is going to have all the data to price based on your risk, okay? So if you've struggled with money before, you're probably going to cop a higher interest rate. If you've been a model money citizen, you're probably going to get money cheaper in terms of when you borrow it, which is really going to lead to debt spirals for people who aren't really careful.
I was going to say, Nicole, isn't that a death spiral? Because the people who are least afford to pay back debt are the ones who are going to be charged the highest interest rate, therefore get the most debt, therefore be least able to pay it
Well,
off.
it's an incentive not to borrow so much, isn't it?
Well,
it's
it
to stop
is,
you from
and
borrowing.
yeah, it's scarily like the US system, and people need to be really careful.
Yeah. Nicole Pedersen-McKinnon, it's great talking to you this morning. Thanks for giving us your tips on banking traps.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Nicole.
Sarah.